No typo emergency alert during fire over response fears. And Israeli strikes kill Lebanese reporter. A fire services department senior officer said the late firefighter Ho Wei-ho did not hand in his identification tool before entering the fire scene. Mimosing reports.
The public hearing continued at Central City Gallery. Under the guidance of Victor Dawes, the committee's senior counsel, Tong Wing-gay, a FSD divisional officer who handles briefing apparatus, first testified. Dawes mentioned the damages on the gas cylinder valve and its collector handrail of late firefighter Ho Wei-ho, which Tong described it as very rare. The FSD officer explained that the gas cylinder valve was made of metal and suspected that the damage was caused when Ho tried to escape and dropped the equipment. But Tong said such a situation would also be uncommon because the cylinder top was protected by a plastic layer. Dawes said that the FSD had failed to locate Ho's position in the blaze. Tong said a personal transmitter key and a tag, which were used to help identify firefighters' positions, remained attached to Ho's apparatus, meaning the deceased firefighter hadn't passed through the entry command point to hand in his tag before entering the fire scene. Derek Chen, the FSD's Deputy Director of Operations, told the committee that the department had deployed sufficient manpower to the fire scene. By the time that Chen had raised the fire to level 5, he said the resources deployed were 6 times more than what's required for a level 5 fire usually. Asked if the FSD should have applied the emergency alert system, allowing authorities to warn the public through mobile messages, Chen said it would take about an hour for the text to be delivered. He also said confusion could result among trapped residents because not enough public education had been made on the system. Chen said authorities need to strengthen public education when it comes to the application of the system in the future. Mums 9, TVB News.
Residents continue to return to Wanfo Court in Taipo to collect what remains of their former homes today. Today, access is granted to 3 blocks, including Wangcheng House, one of the hardest hit buildings in the deadly blaze. Authorities say special support, including psychologists, were provided.
Wangcheng House was where the deadly blaze first erupted. The inferno claimed 81 lives here, making it the second deadliest block after Wang Tai House. The first batch to return today were residents from the lower 5 floors.
咁啊，成個廚房暫時睇咧就應該玩完咗㗎啦，廚房就無法相信。
Mr. Chan visited the wreckage of what was once his home, a second-floor unit ravaged by fire. Fragments of life remained. His family and pet cat had escaped safely that day with some cherished belongings recovered. Fighting back tears, Mrs. Chan says she is trying to stay strong as what's happened has happened. There was nothing much they could do now. They could only bid a final farewell to their neighbors. Some elderly residents, despite mobility issues, slowly made their way upstairs with walking frames. Describing the devastation, Mr. Chow says multiple units on his floor were gutted to just charred ruins. Everything had turned to ashes, but the only thing that matters is that they are alive. Authorities have arranged for residents of Wangcheng and Wang Tai houses to return over 6 days, 3 more than other blocks, and are offering psychological support. Deputy Chief Secretary for Administration Chuk Wing-hing says each household is accompanied by a police officer, while units that suffered fatalities are assigned a clinical psychologist and social worker throughout the visit.
Chuk adds that around 600 households have so far expressed a wish to retrieve their belongings again, and authorities will actively make arrangements. Residents who have not indicated can also convey their wish through their social workers.
Residents of Wang Yan House were also allowed back the same day. Mr. Lee says he has waited a long time for this day, but everything is reduced to ashes. Even the stainless steel sink in the kitchen melted. For Mr. Chung, returning was about saying thank you and goodbye. Some residents searched through the rubble, hoping to recover fragments of their past. Others, unable to secure a slot to return, waited anxiously outside the cordon. Ms. Kwok, whose home was half decimated, spoke through her grief. She says she just hopes people stop calling them greedy to get relief and support as they have lost everything. The government said it will continue to make arrangements for residents who want to return to their flats again.
A Lebanese journalist was killed Wednesday in an Israeli airstrike on a house in southern Lebanon, where she had taken cover while reporting. Tracy Furness has more.
The Daily Al Akbar newspaper says its reporter Amal Khalil was killed. She had been covering the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah that resumed in early March. She took cover in the house in Al Tiri after an earlier Israeli airstrike hit near the car she was travelling in with another colleague. The Lebanese Health Ministry said the first strike killed 2 people. The second strike then hit the house where Khalil and another colleague, Zainab Faraj, had taken cover. Rescue workers were able to get to Faraj and also retrieve the bodies of 2 killed in the first strike. But they were fired on by Israeli forces, so they had to stop attempts to reach Khalil. Khalil remained under the rubble for hours before rescuers could retrieve her body. Israel's military said individuals in the village had violated the ceasefire and denied it targeted journalists. Only days ago, Khalil was reporting on civil defense teams searching for the bodies of others killed in earlier Israeli attacks. Khalil's death comes on the eve of the second round of direct talks between Israeli and Lebanese officials in Washington on extending the ceasefire between the 2 sides that went into effect last Friday. Her death marks the 9th journalist killed in Lebanon so far this year. Committee to Protect Journalists expressed its outrage at the apparent targeting of the 2 journalists and warned the obstruction of rescue efforts may amount to a war crime. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
The war in the Middle East is having far-reaching effects impacting countries already ravaged by conflicts of their own. In a small clinic in a Sudanese village called Nafisa, the shelves of the pharmacy were starting to empty out. The clinic is not sure when the next shipment of medicines would arrive. The last shipment was back in December. Aid groups have been warning that the war with Iran has not only cut off vital shipping routes, but has upended their ability to get food and medicine to millions in need. For the last 3 years, the war in Sudan had made everything a struggle in the village. But since the Iran conflict started, finding medication has become even harder. Pope Leo XIV visits a prison, a school, and prays at a monument in Equatorial Guinea, marking the last stop in his 4-nation African tour. The timing of his visit comes at a significant moment as details emerge about a deal that sees the Trump administration deporting immigrants to the African nation. Here's Tracy Furness again.
Pope Leo XIV watches as a group of inmates dressed in neon orange and beige gathered in a central courtyard of Equatorial Guinea's Bata prison, dancing and waving. Prisoners stand in the rain as the Pope shakes hands and speaks with one of them after receiving a cross. After visiting Bata prison, the Pope prays at the monument of the victims of a 2021 explosion. Later in the town of Mongomo, Pope Leo opens the Pope Francis Technology School. The opening fell on the day after the first anniversary of Pope Francis's passing, who made inmates' visits a regular part of his foreign visits. The Pope's visit to Equatorial Guinea spotlights the country's human rights records and its judiciary, which rights campaigners have criticised for its lack of independence, arbitrary detentions and other abuses. The visit also comes at a time when details emerge about Equatorial Guinea as one of several African nations receiving millions of dollars from the Trump administration to take in immigrants deported from the US to countries other than their own. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
And still ahead, U.S. Navy Secretary leaves Trump administration. 2 killed and scores injured in West Virginia chemical leak. And Samsung workers fight for higher pay and more bonuses. Welcome back. Amid the U.S. blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, the U.S. Department of Defense announced that Navy Secretary John Phelan had been dismissed from his position. Phelan was a major donor to Trump's campaign and was earlier disclosed to have had ties with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The DoD made the announcement on Tuesday via social media, noting the dismissal was effective immediately. U.S. media reported that Phelan was the first secretary in the military to be ousted from power in Trump's second term. The DoD did not offer an explanation for Phelan's dismissal. A report from Reuters noted that Phelan was fired over perceived incompetence in pushing forward the U.S. Navy's shipbuilding measures. Phelan, a former businessman, had no prior military experience before assuming the position of Navy Secretary in March last year. His ties with disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein were disclosed in a CNN report in February this year, with Phelan having boarded Epstein's private jet on at least 2 occasions. A chemical leak in a West Virginia silver recovery plant leaves 2 dead and 1 seriously injured. Dozens, including several ambulance workers, were sent to hospital. Tracy Furness has more.
Emergency responders rushed to the catalyst refiners plant in Institute, West Virginia, to reports of a chemical spill that killed 2 and injured about 30 others, one of whom is in serious condition. Emergency officials say there was a violent reaction of the chemicals and an overreaction when workers were preparing to shut down at least part of the facility when the leak occurred. Personnel in protective gear was seen heading into the plant to help those injured in the incident. Emergency responders set up tents outside a hospital to treat those affected. At a press conference, Lance Wheeler, Kanawha County Commissioner, says a shelter-in-place order was issued to the surrounding area and lifted more than 5 hours later when local air quality and water supply were cleared to be unaffected.
We have lifted all of the shelter-in-places here in Kanawha County. We have done testing of the air qualities in all the areas, including St. Albans, Nitro, Dunbar, Institute, and looking at the weather patterns, and have found that there is no indication of the chemicals in the air affecting the area or the people there as well. And since that time, the DEP was able to arrive on scene, help clean up the sites, and we were able to open up Route 25 so that people could be able to drive through there.
West Virginia Governor Patrick Morrisey praises first responders and sends prayers to the victims, including 7 injured ambulance workers. He also ordered a full investigation into the incident.
I know that there'll be a lot of questions from the public, and we may not be able to answer every question tonight, but we want to come before you because it's critical to let you know what's happening on the ground. Obviously, there's going to be an investigation of everything that happened today. And so we'll be working and collaborating with everyone.
The site, about 16 kilometers from the state capital of Charleston, is located in a region known as West Virginia's Chemical Valley. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Thousands of unionized workers from Samsung Electronics rallied at a semiconductor complex in South Korea's Pyeongtaek, demanding better bonuses and threatening to strike. This takes place against the backdrop of booming demand for artificial intelligence, driving up memory chip profits. The rally came hours after Samsung's rival SK hynix posted an all-time high in quarterly revenue and operating profit for the first quarter of 2026. Samsung also announced record first quarter profits earlier. Samsung and SK hynix produce about 2/3 of global memory chips. Samsung's union, which represents about 74,000 workers, says the company has failed to offer adequate compensation despite its strong performance. Foreign Minister Wang Yi has arrived in Cambodia, embarking on his 3-country trip in Southeast Asia.
Foreign Minister Wang Yi and Defense Minister Dong Jun reached Phnom Penh, capital of Cambodia, Wednesday evening to attend the first meeting under the 2+2 strategic dialogue mechanism between the foreign ministers and defense ministers of China and Cambodia. Wang says the mechanism reflects the ironclad friendship between the 2 countries. On the conflict between Cambodia and Thailand, Wang says China supports Cambodia and Thailand in making good use of existing bilateral mechanisms to rebuild mutual trust and improve relations. Wang says China is willing to provide platforms for more comprehensive and effective communication between the 2 Southeast Asian countries. In view of the complex geopolitical environment, Wang asked China and Cambodia would support one another with mutual trust and strategic resilience. China's defense chief Dong Jun meanwhile remarks the meeting helps promote comprehensive cooperation between China and Cambodia. Dong says, amid a complex and changing global and regional security atmosphere, China and Cambodia diplomacy and defense will work together to safeguard the safety and developmental interests of both sides. Noting that China is Cambodia's most trusted friend, Cambodian Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation Prak Sokhonn says their country looks forward to deepening their partnership and promoting the construction of industry and agriculture between China and Cambodia. Deputy Prime Minister and Defense Minister Tea Seha says he will maintain communication and coordination with China over key strategic matters. In the meeting, both sides agreed to deepen law enforcement, jointly combat online gambling and telecom fraud, and safeguard their respective cybersecurity. The meeting lasted about half an hour, and before the meeting, Wang Yi and Dong Jun met with Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet.
Last year, a private club in an upscale residential area in Kowloon was found to have leaked the personal data of more than 9,000 members. Now the city's privacy watchdog has completed its probes, ruling the club has violated the privacy ordinance.
Yao Ya Chun Garden Club in Kowloon Tong saw its computer server hit by ransomware in October last year, rendering it inoperable. Personal data of 9,045 current and former members was leaked, including ID numbers, contact phone numbers, and addresses. The Office of the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data identified 5 major issues following investigations. They include the use of outdated remote access software with known security vulnerabilities to connect to the affected server, lack of user authentication measures, use of outdated antivirus software and firewalls, and excessive retention of member data. Some data have been stored for over 7 years with a lack of organizational data security measures.
The vulnerability enabled the threat actors to compromise the account credential used by the service provider to access the software. This was further facilitated by the servers being left in a locked-in state without the implementation of additional authentications control.
The privacy watchdog rules that the club breached the privacy ordinance and ordered it to take remedial actions. The office also warns databases holding a large cache of complete and continuously updated personal data are often targets for cyber attacks. They remind that organizations can use strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, VPNs for remote access, and provide more rigorous training for staff.
Hong Kong's composite consumer price index rose 1.7% in March, larger than the average rate of increase in January and February. The government explained this was mainly due to the sharp rise in international oil prices caused by the Middle East conflict, which accelerated the price increase of fuel-related items. Price for medical services saw the largest increase, rising by 10.8% year-on-year, followed by electricity, gas and water, and transportation and education services, all rising by 3.9%. The government said it has introduced short-term targeted measures to address rising fuel prices and will continue to closely monitor developments. The government is formulating its first 5-year plan. Chief Executive John Lee met with Hong Kong deputies to the National People's Congress and members of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference to solicit opinions. The first symposium for discussion was held in the afternoon at the government headquarters, attended by about 20 Hong Kong NPC deputies. Participating government officials included Chief Executive John Lee and Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Janice Tse. After the meeting, the NPC deputies said they hoped that Hong Kong's 5-year plan would better align with the national 15th 5-year plan and better integrate into and serve the overall national development strategy. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.